Welcome to the first episode of Brown Edwards Benefits Buzz, where we talk all things benefit plans, providing guidance on key issues that may be impacting the administration and audit results of your benefit plan. I'm your host, Brittany Quinn. I'm an Audit Director in our Roanoke, Virginia office. For those unfamiliar with Brown Edwards and Company, we invite you to check out our website. A link to that website can be found in the description of this podcast, where you will find information on our service lines, as well as our locations and our skilled professionals. With all that being said, I would like to kick off our very first episode by introducing you to our guest for today, Jessica White.
Thanks for having me.
Great. Well, before we get into the topic for today, I would love to give you a few minutes to provide a background of what you do for the firm, just a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm Jessica White. I'm a director in the Lynchburg office of Brown Edwards, and I've been auditing employee benefit plans for almost 15 years now.
Awesome. Appreciate that. Well, let's go ahead and get into our topic for today, late contributions. This is an area that can be quite controversial, as the guidance available doesn't provide a straight answer. And that's a few reasons why we felt it was very important to discuss in this episode. So how do you even know what would be considered a late contribution? Jess, is this defined anywhere?
Well, according to the Department of Labor, a 401k contribution is considered late or delinquent if it's not deposited into the plan's trust account by the 15th business day of the month following the month in which the employee's contribution was withheld from their paycheck. So essentially, this means that employers must deposit employee contributions to the plan as soon as administratively feasible, but no later than the 15th business day of the following month.
Okay, so the first step is knowing how to identify if your plan is remitting employee deferrals timely. Jess, could you walk me through the steps to analyze a plan's contribution for timeliness?
Right. So the first step here is to determine the earliest date that you can segregate these employee contributions from general assets of the company. So typically this is 2 to 3 days. So what you're comparing here is the payroll withholding check date and the date that that employee's contribution actually gets to their retirement account.
Okay, that makes sense. So the key dates to take away here is the payroll check date, the date my withholding was withheld from my paycheck, and then the date that the TPA confirms that they received my contribution.
Right. So the important thing here is ensuring that employees' money is put into the plan as quickly as possible so that they can start earning based on market earnings on their investments in the plan.
Okay. That's great. But what do we need to do if we determine some of the contributions are later than others and we have some issues with the plan? What correction programs do you see can we use?
Right. So the DOL has a few different programs available for correcting these delinquent contributions depending on the circumstances. They offer a voluntary fiduciary correction program, an audit closing agreement program, and also a self-correction program. And you can find details of these online. And the one we see used most commonly is the self-correction program.
Okay, so what would be the next steps under the self-correction program?
So once you determine which deposits are late, and you calculate the lost earnings necessary to correct them. And essentially what this is doing is making the participants whole, as if this money that they wanted to go into the plan went in on time, they would have been earning money, right? Because it would have been invested in the market. So the lost earnings is essentially the calculation of what they would have earned had the money been in on time.
Gotcha. So I just realized you brought up a new term here with the term lost earnings. Can you give us a little bit more information? What are lost earnings and how are those lost earnings calculated?
Okay. So the way that they are calculated is you can involve your TPA to help assist with this calculation. And the calculation is also dependent on the participants. Like certain participants are affected. Let's say you have a monthly payroll and a biweekly payroll, and the biweekly payroll is the one that's late. Well, only the participants on that biweekly payroll are the ones that are affected and need to have the lost earnings calculated. So once you get the lost earnings calculated and the TPA assists with that, you can then deposit those lost earnings into the trust, into those affected participants' accounts.
That's very helpful. Really appreciate that, Jess. Let's talk a little bit about how to prevent these late contributions. Jess, can you tell us some of the best practices or policies and procedures that someone can implement and to ensure that they're remitting their employee deferrals timely going forward?
Right. So that's the most important thing, is to make sure that everybody that's involved with these employee contributions knows the importance of getting them in on time, and also that you set policies and procedures that your payroll department, your HR department is aware of, so that they understand what's expected of them, is how soon to get those employee contributions into the trust after the payroll check date. So, for example, if you have deposits that are late because the HR person went on vacation and the person who normally remits these contributions to the trust is unavailable, or maybe there's an issue with the TPA's site and you cannot somehow get these remitted on the day that you would normally remit them, make sure you keep record of any of those disruptions. But also keep in mind that it's not acceptable to be late due to the HR person being on vacation, right? You should have policies and procedures so that there is a backup person who can take over and remit these contributions timely, even if the typical person is out. Right.
That makes sense. Appreciate it.
Right. So it's important also you can coordinate with your payroll provider and determine the earliest date that it's reasonable that you can get these contributions to the plan. That can help set up your policies at the number of days.
Really great advice. Thanks again, Jess. Really appreciate you joining me. Also, a big thank you to the listeners for joining our podcast today. If your plan is dealing with these issues and you would like to chat, feel free to reach out to us. I can be reached at bquinn@becpas.com or directly at 540-777-6053. We're always happy to help you with any issues that your plan is facing. Before we bring this episode to a close, Jess, would you like to share your contact information in case anyone would like to contact you directly?
Sure. So I can be reached by email at jwhite@becpas.com.
Great. Well, that brings our very first episode of BE Benefits Buzz to an end. Stay tuned for episode 2, where we plan to discuss errors identified in plan audits resulting from the use of incorrect compensation. Thanks.
Thanks for having me.